You might know the old tale of the British cycling team that since 1908, at a period of time in the early 2000s, had never won an Olympic gold medal or won a Tour de France in its 110-year history. But this all changed very quickly when a new performance director called Dave Brailsford was hired to lead the team. And what's interesting about Dave is that he was known for applying marginal gains to his processes to get the maximum output. His philosophy was pretty simple. It's the idea that if you take all the rituals, components, and aspects that go into bike racing and make each one of them 1% better, regardless of how you do this, you will eventually come out on top. So over the next few years after he was hired, Brailsford went nuts. He ordered new seats that were more comfortable for the riders. He rubbed alcohol on the bike tires to make them stick better to the road. Racers wore indoor suits to make them more aerodynamic. Different massage gels were tried in order to increase the recovery time of each contestant. The mattresses and pillows that the racers used to sleep on nights where they were competing were tested to get them a better night's rest. And they even had shorts that were heated so that they could optimize the temperatures of the muscles so that they could perform at their highest level during the race. All other teams, it seemed like this guy was off the rails, like he had no idea what was going on. Just 5 years after Dave started as the director for the team, they won 60% of the gold medals in the Beijing Olympics for cycling. And in 2012 at the London Olympics, the Britons set 9 Olympic medals and 7 world records for cycling events. That same year, the British cycling team won their first Tour de France victory, and they did it again the year after that. And by 2017, they'd won 5 of the previous 6 Tour de France wins, and that was something that had never been seen before. Between 2007 and 2017, Britain's team won 178 world championships, 66 Olympic gold medals, 5 Tour de France victories in what came to be the biggest straight of British cycling in history. I'm going to give you some ideas in this video on how to improve your productivity that's really helped me in the past few years and that have really kickstarted my self-development process. It's impossible not to want something instantly these days. Everything seems to be at our fingertips. But success is really the accumulation of small bits and pieces of things you learn and apply over time that really make the big difference. Not only does doing this bring success, it also builds a passion, and that's where the idea of incremental excellence comes in. I'll show you how to flip the idea of getting 1% better every day on its head to get the maximum amount of productivity out of your days in the most realistic way possible. All of this speaks to the power of small changes, something incremental. Using Brailsford's mentality, we can apply this to our own work. So what is incremental excellence? It is the accumulation of skills, knowledge, and passion that you develop over time that creates an expert. You might have seen this chart here, and that is the 1% better chart. This has taken the world and the internet by storm, and it shows the power of getting 1% better every single day and how that compounds over the period of 1 year. Here you can see doing 1% better every day makes you 37 times better in the span of a year. The idea with this chart is to show that consistent time and effort put into something compounds into something much greater. If we think about getting 1% better at working out on a daily basis or 1% better at running your business, what exactly does that mean? It's not very obvious what 1% better looks like. So what if we flip this on its head? Instead of us getting 1% better, why don't we dedicate 1% of our day to getting better? And you can put an actual number to this, something you can stick to, something you can do day in and day out without question. 1 day is equal to 1,440 minutes. What's 1% of that? It's 14.4 minutes. So if you dedicate, give it some cushion, 15 minutes per day to work on something you want to get better at, that's 1% of each day you're spending getting better at that thing, which will inevitably compound as you build that habit. It's the way to incremental excellence. The idea here is obviously to build a habit, to stick to something. And the more time you do, the better, but always stick to that minimum of 15 minutes. What these 15 minutes will do is allow you to fall in love with the process of getting better at that thing. By consistently subjecting yourself to the pain of sitting down and doing it, you'll get better and better, and you'll start to love it more. Even if it is just the process, you won't necessarily seek success. You'll find reward in the actual process. I'm reading a book right now by Anna Lemke called Dopamine Nation. And there's a very big emphasis, if you're a psychology major, you'll know this, on the pain-pleasure balance. She uses the analogy of a seesaw. If there's a lot of pain in your life, your body and your mind will go towards a route of pleasure. If there's a lot of pleasure in your life, your life will go towards pain. That's just how the brain works, how the pathways work. It's the natural way dopamine works. Now, the example that she uses is a drug addict. If a drug addict is very used to pleasure, they use this drug on a regular basis, drugs like cocaine, OxyContin, or heroin, they start to develop these symptoms of pain. Whether or not that pain is real, they develop these symptoms. It can be a bodily pain, a kind of mental or emotional pain. It's some kind of pain that they develop that is helping them to balance that pain-pleasure seesaw. So again, we can take something out of this and flip it on its head. What if we want to create more pleasure in our lives? If you do something that's painful every single day, something you don't want to do necessarily, but you know you have to do, life becomes pleasurable by design.
Holy shit.
You'll know this feeling if you do a particularly difficult workout, you finish a big and long project that you've been working on at work, or you simply help someone out at something that wasn't necessarily easy for you, but you felt fantastic afterwards, potentially even days after the fact. There are some difficulties with incremental excellence, as you would imagine with anything of this caliber. And one of them that I've personally suffered a lot is that your lowest moments define how high your highest highs will go. I find this especially difficult in cases where I need to work out. It's late at night, I'm tired, I've had a long day, but I still do that anyway. I feel amazing. And although I don't want to do it, it's something that I've learned to do anyways. It takes a lot of commitment, a lot of motivation to do this, so it really helps if you have someone to do it with you. Nevertheless, it will always be difficult to do this, and that's something I've obviously struggled with. It's one of the hardest things I'm trying to get better at, so I'm by no means perfect, but this is one of the difficulties with incremental excellence because sometimes it feels like you're taking one step forward and two steps back. So just something to keep in mind. If you catch yourself doing this over and over, push yourself to do that anyways. Obviously, if you have a broken leg and you're forcing yourself to do leg day, please don't do that. But if in a reasonable way you can make yourself go to the gym or get that 15 minutes of work done. Another problem with incremental excellence is the standard definition we all hear. What I mentioned before, the 1% better every day. If you think about this logically, it really doesn't make much sense. Hello? Yeah, it's been going okay. I started at 1 kilometer a day. Do you remember that last year? Yeah, and that honestly, man, I could not feel my legs. Yeah, I mean, you told me to get 1% better every day, so I decided to just increase it by 1% every day. How long am I running right now? About 38 kilometers a day, about a marathon. Yeah, I mean, I think if I keep doing it at this rate, it'll get even better and I can just run endlessly. I just wanted to let you know that I can't feel my legs, that's all. All right, yeah, I'll keep going. See you later. There's diminishing returns, first of all. If you do something at first, you're going to be getting better very quickly at it, but over time this tapers off. You'll also reach a point where an optimal level has been reached and it doesn't make sense to continue improving. For example, a diet. If you improve your diet by 1% every day, after a few months or a year, you'll get to a point where your diet is optimized. You're eating very healthy. You're eating how your body responds best. And there's no point improving by 1% more every single day after that point. Another thing I've found very difficult with incremental excellence is the fact that it sometimes feels like you're not getting anywhere. And this is probably the hardest part of starting something. If you are doing the work and you're putting in all this time, there's no defined timeline for when you get addicted to the process or when you start to see some success. And this is often the hardest part, and I know it is for me as well. This video is a great example. I'm slowly building momentum, becoming the person I want to be through these videos, and hopefully eventually reaching success through them. I know that this is building me into the type of person I want to be, but it's still hard for me to muster the motivation to sit down in front of the camera, to come up with a script, to do all this work, to essentially just send out into the void. But that's just part of the process. It's part of the momentum building. Tied to this is boredom. It's not easy doing this. There's a lot of repetitive stuff that you have to do day in and day out, stuff that you'll probably fall asleep doing, but you need to do it anyway, and it's what separates the normal people from the few that make it. So upon reading a few articles and things that have worked in my own life, I want to give you some practical advice for how to stick to the process of incremental excellence in the long term. The first is to look at what you can subtract out of your life, so-called improvement by subtraction. Instead of looking at what can I get better at, what can I do more of, you can look at what can you do less of, and this turns right to your bad habits. If your diet isn't where you want it to be, you can start looking at, okay, what can I do to start eating less shitty food? If you're someone who procrastinates, how can you procrastinate less? And linked to this is looking at your past self, so-called measuring of the past. This gives you some kind of measure on what to look at going forward. If you are at a point where you're able to do 15 minutes a day of focused work, which is amazing, you want to focus on leveling that up. What if you do 20 minutes the next week? Try to make it some kind of like running challenge with yourself. It'll really motivate you to keep going. And if you log everything, which I find very helpful, it gives you kind of a visual way to track your progress as well. And this could be a video on its own, but it's the idea of scheduling rather than goal setting. I know I used to always have these big goals like post a video 2 weeks on Friday from now, but that was just way too arbitrary. I didn't have any kind of plan on how to get there, so I've turned to scheduling. And what this really means is taking each day, day by day, figuring out how many days you need before the deadline of whatever you're trying to do, be that weight loss, be that optimizing your diet, or how many times you want to work out for beach days in the summer. Creating a schedule changes all of that. What I like to do is every day before I sit down to do the work, or preferably the day before, but that never really happens for me, so I do it the same day, is to sit down and just come up with a plan of everything I want to accomplish that day, how it's going to affect the bigger picture, and how it's going to contribute to the overall goal in that amount of time. I know exactly what I need to be doing at each point. If it helps you, you can even create like a checklist that creates a system for your process. If you're like me and create YouTube videos, for example, you can have a checklist of things that you need to do from the idea generation to the posting of the video to give you a step-by-step direction on how to schedule everything out. You need to plan for failure. I know 1% better sounds great in theory, but there's obviously going to be a time where you're not improving 1%. There's going to be an emergency. There's going to be a day where you're so tired you'd rather just sleep instead of doing that 15 minutes, and that's okay. It's going to happen. A workout, I can't feel my legs, remember? And I think James Clear said it best that he never misses twice. So if he screws up one day, he's going to hop right back on the wagon the next day and get right back on that habit cycle. And finally, a way to stick with incremental excellence is to look at the average speed of your actions. I like the example that I read online on James Clear's blog of a coach that looked at calorie intakes for the week instead of the day. What this means is that he didn't care if you had a cheat meal on a random Thursday and ate a whole tub of ice cream. He didn't give a shit about that. What he looked at was total calories for the week. If you could make it work within that schedule, it was all good. Same thing with your progress. If you miss one day, or you had one day where you worked less than you were supposed to on whatever you were working on, don't feel bad about it. Only look at it in the macro scale. I think Jim Rohn said it very well, that success is a few disciplines practiced every day, and failure is simply a few errors in judgment repeated every day. You can be great if you want to be, and you can also be terrible if you want to be. It really comes down to your daily actions and habits. And we're always all searching for more information, especially in an economy where there's endless opportunities to gather more information, knowledge, and strategies on how to become better. But realistically, what if you just focused on what's already working and doubled down on that instead? So all this to say, don't get caught up in the numbers. Simply work on your craft or whatever you want to get better at, whether it be your weight, your diet, your exercise, your business, your day-to-day life, your relationship life. It doesn't matter what it is. If you dedicate consistent effort towards this goal, you will, two things. First, you'll inevitably keep repeating it and end up falling in love with the process, even if it's boredom that you're encountering. And second, you'll eventually become a master at whatever you're doing if you do it on a long enough time horizon.